Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? My name is John and thank you very much for joining me for another exciting episode of Secrets of the Motorway. Today we'll be looking at the M20 motorway. The M20 is a 50-mile motorway that starts at junction 3 of the M25 in Kent. It then snakes its way through Kent before ending in Folkestone in Kent. It's part of the European Route 15, or E15, and no, I hadn't heard of it either. The E15 is a route that's made up of many different roads and crosses many countries and totals around 2,300 miles. It was conjured up in the 1950s by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, who came up with the International E-Road Network. It's a similar concept to, say, that of the Pan-American highway that crosses the Americas. The idea behind the network is to utilise as best one can the existing roads and motorways to avoid unnecessary construction and to allow for the easy transport of goods. Across much of Europe, the roads and motorways offer signs to show you that you're on one of these European routes. However, in the UK, we don't have such signage. Back to the M20, and since we're a motoring channel-ish, we obviously have to point out the well-known Brands Hatch race circuit, which can be found between junctions 1 and 2. Brands Hatch started life as farmland and then became a military testing ground before becoming a cycle racetrack. The first cycle race was held in 1926, and it wasn't long after that the motorcycles came along. It wasn't until the 1950s that an actual tarmac surface was laid. Amazingly, if you use Google Earth and set the images to the 1940s, you can see how things looked before the track was laid. Don't you just think that's absolutely amazing? A little bit down the road, after junction 2, sees us at junction 2A, obviously. However, you might notice that there isn't any sign of junction 2A on the M20 at all. Due to a technicality, junction 2A for the M20 is actually to be found on the M26. It was decided upon construction of the M26 that it would follow the junction numbering system on the M20. We'll be exploring the M26 in more detail in an upcoming video, but suffice to say, you won't find junction 2A on the M20. Just after you pass the point where the M20 and the M26 merge, keep an eye out for this footbridge that connects East Street with East Street North. In 2016, a lorry driver crashed into the original footbridge, causing it to collapse across the carriageway, closing the motorway over a busy bank holiday weekend. Our next stop takes us off the motorway and underneath to visit the M20 graffiti bridge. You'll find it between junctions 5 and 6 where the M20 crosses the River Medway. I'm sure most would agree that there's a big difference between a graffiti tag and graffiti artwork such as this. And this is absolutely wonderful. I really like graffiti when it's done properly. Don't you think it brightens up what would otherwise be quite a grey, concrete-looking drab wall?
Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, tossed salads and scrambled eggs.
Junctions 5 to 7 make up the oldest section of the M20, and that opened in 1960. It actually opened as the A20 brackets M Maidstone bypass before more motorway was added and it became the M20. Along with the M1 motorway, the A20M is actually one of the oldest stretches of motorway in the country. However, following modernisation and motorway widening, there's nothing really left of the original carriageway. As we've seen in our previous episodes, for the most part, service stations were factored in when planning and building the motorways. Not all of them ended up being built, and sometimes you can find evidence, such as old slip roads, to show where they would have been. When it comes to the M20 and the site of what would have been Detling services, we find absolutely nothing to show that there would have been a service station here. It wasn't built because the council decided they wanted to utilise a different site elsewhere that was slightly smaller. In addition, woodland wouldn't need to be destroyed and it wouldn't cause any problems with the nearby junction 7. So the idea was dropped in favour of building a services near Hollingbourne. Today we know it as Maidstone services, which is to be found at junction 8 of the M20. Hidden amongst the trees between junctions 8 and 9, we find a hidden junction that, as usual, allows access for the emergency services or maintenance vehicles. A short distance after, we find another hidden junction, although this one's a little bit more visible. The slip road found on the southbound side links to Leakin Lane, and for a short while it follows the original path that Leakin Lane used to take before the M20 came along and it was rerouted. At junction 10, we find a set of abandoned slip roads. To find out why they exist, we need to look at the recently built junction 10A. Well, I say recent, it was built in 2019, but that's fairly recent for motorways. Junction 10A came about as a result of the planning and construction of a 93-hectare inland border facility. This site, amongst other things, looks after goods going in and out of the country that are perhaps a little bit more interesting, such as animals or hazardous products. As you can imagine, with Dover Port and the Channel Tunnel just down the road, the site sees an awful lot of HGV traffic coming and going throughout the day. Of course, to keep things efficient, a new junction was constructed. However, the newly created junction sits awfully close to the existing Junction 10. The decision was made to remove this set of slip roads at Junction 10 because they wouldn't have been able to fit everything in otherwise. If you're heading north on the M20, you now need to do so at Junction 10A. And likewise, if you're looking to head south on the M20, you'll be needing the new Junction 10A as well. With the new Junction 10A seeing completion in 2019, you could say that the M20 has been under construction for 59 years. Keep an eye out for this abandoned structure between junctions 10 and 11. There's not much left of this farm that was built in the early 1900s, but when passing, it's always piqued my curiosity. At Junction 11A, we find the Dollans Moor Freight Yard. This was built in 1988 as part of the Channel Tunnel. Its main purpose is crew and locomotive changes rather than marshalling or shunting. Just up the road, you'll find the Eurotunnel passenger terminal off Junction 12. Junction 13 of the M20 is the end of the road. But before you go, let's have a look at Caesar's Camp and the Castle Hill viewpoint. Caesar's Camp is the name given by the locals for Folkestone Castle. And despite the name, it isn't Roman at all and was actually built around 1095. You get a really clear view of the Eurotunnel passenger terminal up here, which sends its trains on its way to France right underneath our feet. And it's here you'll also find the entrance to the Channel Tunnel. The view from up here is fantastic. You can see all of Folkestone, the M20 that we've just come down, and over there in the distance is Dungeness, England's Wild West. And there we are, guys. That's all from me for today. I hope you liked the video. If you did, there's a button specifically for that. And the recent increase of subscribers really is absolutely wonderful. I hope we can continue to make films that people find enjoyable and interesting. I'm not going to be getting rid of the hat, though, I'm afraid. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it is you get up to. My name's John. You've been watching Auto Shenanigans, and I shall see you guys next time for another exciting episode of Secrets of the Motorway. Until then, take care. See ya. Bye.